It's a bit like the National Health Service, which is wonderful and free at the point of need, but we all do pay for it. We pay for it out of our tax. And what I think is, especially for an indie like us, we don't have the millions and millions of pounds to market a game, but word of mouth is hugely valuable to us. If somebody plays a game and says to their friend, "You should play this game, I got it on Game Pass," and they go, "I don't have Game Pass," and they go, "Well, buy it then." We are intrinsically a technology company. We're a creative technology company, so new technology is always exciting.
Require the operator.
So I saw it's coming out onto Xbox Game Pass. What are the benefits for the developers for putting the game onto a platform like that straight away?
Well, Xbox are great to work with. Microsoft are great to work with. So is Sony, and we work with Steam and Epic as well. We have a really good relationship with all of them. But some of them have got special. They want to do special things in their own special ways. So Xbox has been really interesting. What I find about Game Pass is that it allows you to reach a broad audience and sort of spread the word for a game. It's gone very well for us with Sniper Elite Resistance recently, but it means that people can try the game that they might not have immediately wanted to try because they have to spend money on it. So with Game Pass, they obviously pay for it, but indirectly. It's a bit like the National Health Service, which is wonderful and free at the point of need, but we all do pay for it. We pay for it out of our tax. But if you desperately need it, it's great. You don't have to suddenly cough up tons of money. And so in some ways, Game Pass. I'm not comparing Game Pass to the NHS, just in case anybody's getting very confused. But I'm comparing it to the idea that you don't have to spend money directly on one of our games to try it. So you can have a go on Game Pass and you go, "Oh, you know what, I'll give this a go. I don't normally like this kind of action adventure exploring game." And then you play it for a bit and you go, "Actually, I do really like it. This is good. I'll keep going." And there's no barrier to entry in a way, and that spreads the word. And what we've found is that these sort of systems like Game Pass and Sony's equivalent actually spread the word. You actually get more people noticing the game because more people are playing it. And what I think is, especially for an indie like us, we don't have the millions and millions of pounds to market a game, but word of mouth is hugely valuable to us. If somebody plays a game and says to their friend, "You should play this game, I got it on Game Pass," and they go, "I don't have Game Pass," and they go, "Well, buy it then." And that personal recommendation is incredibly powerful, and I think that happens. It's just another way of encountering a product, encountering one of our games. I've watched movies at the cinema and then realised I want a copy of it and gone to buy the DVD or the Blu-ray. And I've also watched them on streaming services. And you think, I've paid to watch this movie probably 6 times or something, because it's part of your cultural makeup. And just because something's on a service like Game Pass, I don't think it undermines the other forms of attracting attention either. People will buy things at retail, although retail's declining a bit, but it's still there. It's still valuable to us. But also people going, "Oh, I've heard of that. I'll go and buy it. I'll go and buy a physical copy on Amazon or equivalent." So yeah, I'm a huge believer in getting as many people to play our games as possible, whatever way they want to.
Yeah, it's a good strategy, I would say. And one thing I noticed as well, looking at kind of the whens and wherefores of the game coming out, is that because I was kind of pleasantly surprised to see it is coming out on PS4 and Xbox One still. How important is that to you to kind of not forget about the people that are still on that hardware? And I imagine that's another thing that makes it more challenging to make it as well.
It definitely makes it more challenging because you've got to accommodate those platforms. Those platforms are now relatively old and lacking in power. So the difficulty is with a cross-platform strategy like that, you've got a lot more work to do, and you, to a certain extent, have to scale things down for the less powerful platforms to get things to work. For this game, when we're releasing, we felt it was really important to use the legacy platforms. But there will come a time in the near future where most people have moved to the new platforms, and when that is, I don't know, but it's got to be fairly soon. But it does add complication, because it means you've got 5 or 6 different SKUs, different platforms to work on, and it means you've got 5 or 6 times the quality assurance, because you've got to test the game on every platform. So it takes up more resources to do it, but I think on balance it's worth it.
Yeah. And to what extent do you start to get your head turned when new hardware gets announced, like a big Nintendo one that was announced the other day?
We're lucky. We get awareness of new hardware before the general public usually, and because we've got to work on games, especially if we're working on a game. So, for example, we were a release product for Sony's VR headset. We did Battlezone for Sony's VR. We got the headsets very early. Obviously, we have to be very careful. We can't talk to anybody about them. We have to deny all knowledge of it. Can't even say we can't talk about it. We have to. We're not allowed to. So that's always useful. We are intrinsically a technology company. We're a creative technology company. So new technology is always exciting. But it always brings with it challenges as well, because it's a new hardware. What can we do? How do we use this hardware well? How do we? In this case, we've got on older platforms and new platforms. How do we make it as good as it can be on the new platforms? And how do we make sure it still works well and is good on the older platforms? And that's quite a balancing act. There's quite a lot of technical juggling has to go on for that. But yeah, at some stage you move on. We're not developing games for PlayStation 2 or original PlayStation anymore. Nobody is. And at some stage, I don't even know when everybody transitioned away from those, but there are still games that play on them. I've got systems and I still play them from time to time. But they're not obsolete now, but they're arguably ancient history for many people, depending on how old you are. Showing my age now, yeah, I mean, new technology is great. PC landscape is interesting compared to consoles, though, because PC, you always get a new piece of hardware, and you work with the hardware manufacturers, and they've got to update their drivers, and you've got to try and make sure your game, if you can, works to help them sell their hardware. It's a sort of mutually supportive system. Typically, people who buy games, there's a large number of people who buy games also upgrade their hardware as well. So there's a sort of tendency to link people with more disposable income with buying more games, which they can, and they tend to also upgrade their hardware as well. So you've got that sort of system where we want to make sure we're making games for the cutting edge of technology, but also not forgetting large number of people that haven't got the latest Ultra Ninja Mega graphics card. And
the last thing from the things I noticed in the T's and C's was that there's a story expansion being kind of promised as a pre-order benefit that people will get down the line. To what extent do you look at Atomfall as, I don't want to say as a platform, but we've done all this work now to make this thing, we can iterate on it, we can add new story to that world? And
Well, I think all the indications are it's going to be a really big success. So which is great because it's independent. We're a British company, and we export massively. So that's really great for the UK. We'll bring money into the country, which the government is really trying to encourage. Growth is a big thing they keep talking about. So hopefully that'll be recognised. And the games industry is a very big and important growing part of the creative industries. The others are great too, but the games in particular, biotech, but games as well, are growing very, very fast. So we've got to encourage that, which is great. We think it's going to be successful, so we're doing some planning on what we can do with it as a, dare I say, a franchise, as an IP. The world, we've created a lot of stories and a lot of background, and we could do more with them. There's lots of other areas that we thought up, but we couldn't fit into the game. And so if people want it, which I think hopefully they will, we've already got people planning. I've got some ideas as well, and planning what else could we do with this landscape. Where can we go in Britain? Where can we destroy fictionally in Britain that's going to be interesting? What can we do with it? So yeah, I'm hoping it becomes another franchise to sit alongside the Sniper Elite series, the Zombie Army series. Evil Genius was a big success for us as well, and now Atomfall. So fingers crossed. All the data so far would indicate it's going to be a big success. Hopefully it's a ginormous success, and then we can do much more of it. Because I enjoy walking around the shattered landscape of Cumberland, as it was called.